Hello students, I am going to give you some important points on your paper 6th Sem paper 6.5. Okay, it's about the history of economic thought. Now actually we haven't done much on this paper. I think I had given you an introduction on the marginalist school. Now today we'll come to the Austrian school. Okay, AUSTRIAN, Austrian school. Now you listen very carefully and you listen and then you can write down as your note. Now there's a country Austria, no? So from that country this school of thought has come. The Austrians were very instrumental in sharpening the tool of margin and popularizing its use. So but it was called a school of thought. The Austrians worked in a well-defined framework, and in spite of the individual differences, they can be easily recognized as a well-knit group. The primary aim was to uncover the ultimate and unified principles of value, and in this connection, they adopted a hedonistic, listen carefully, hedonistic or pain and pleasure method. They virtually ignored costs and put them as something flowing back from values. For this reason, their theory is quite weak in tackling the diverse market situations in which competitive forces are kept at bay and monopolistic controls come into play. However, the Austrian theory is highly individualistic and in a way it is atomistic. Individualistic mane ki it was quite say narrow, confined to say individuals. So now regarding this Austrian school, it had a peculiar scientific atmosphere, and it produced a forceful intellectual leader and two equally intelligent loyal disciples. The intellectual leader was Menger, MENGER, and the two equally intelligent and loyal disciples of Menger were Wieser, WIESER, and Bohm-Bawerk, BOHM-BAWERK. So all these three personalities were regarded as the co-founders of the Austrian school. Later on, other Austrians, say Schumpeter, Ludwig von Mises, MacLuhan, Haberler, Hayek, and Oskar Morgenstern also joined, and they also put forward their contributions in the intellectual tradition of the school. Now, the three writers, in spite of the specific differences in their thinking and approaches, were of one mind as far as the general attitude of the Austrian school is concerned. So, the main points of the Austrian school, you just listen carefully. Number one, Wieser and Bohm-Bawerk accepted and propagated the theoretical achievement of Menger, that is the utility theory of value. Okay. Number two, both of them not only simply preached their master's ideas but also further developed them in different directions. Wieser in the fields of resource allocation and factor pricing, and Bohm-Bawerk in the fields of capital and interest. So both of them, they just elaborated the ideas. No? Then number 3, all the 3 writers upheld the theory of imputation, that is, the producer goods derive their value from the value of consumer goods they produce. This theory is particularly the Austrian contribution. That is what? The value of consumer goods. Then number 4, the Austrians criticize the historical method and the abstract method of analysis. Remember this point? Then next point, the Austrians preferred verbal and non-mathematical exposition of economic theory to the mathematical analysis. Next, because of their non-mathematical approach, the Austrians regarded economic functions, that is utility function, demand function, etc. as discontinuous functions expressible in the sets of stair-step rather than as smooth curves. So, the above points are some of the common features of the Austrian school. But besides this, the individual contributions of these founders are also important. Now, we will take up here, about Menger. Okay, Karl Menger. His full name was Karl Menger, and he was born in 1840 and died in 1921. Now, Karl Menger is one of the trio to whom the credit for formally establishing the marginalist school goes. Like Gaussen, Jevons and Walras, he independently found the principles of marginalism. Menger was born in Galicia and was educated in Vienna and Prague and got his doctor's degree from the University of Krakow, Krakow. To begin with, he served in Austrian civil service, and in 1857 he wrote his famous book, in 1871. In 1871 he wrote his famous book Foundations of Political Economy. Note it down, Foundations of Political Economy in 1871. Then regarding his other books, actually you just some of the books were translated, no, because he wrote it in different languages, so it was translated, and one such book is Principles of Economics. Okay, 2 persons, James Dingwall and Bert F. Hoselitz, translated it in 1950. So, Principles of Economics. Then in 1883, Menger's other works were, another major work was Inquiries into the Method of Social Sciences and particularly Social Economy. You remember the name of the book, Inquiries into the Method of Social Sciences and particularly Social Economy, 1883. Then in 1884 he wrote The Errors of Historismus in German Political Economy. The Errors of Historismus in German Political Economy. Then in 1888 another book on the Theory of Capital. Okay, and he wrote several articles in Yearbook for Political Economy and Statistics for the Theory of Capital. Yearbook for Political Economy and Statistics for the Theory of Capital. You remember all this because all objective questions are based on the names of these books. Okay. Now, Menger classified the study of economic phenomena as historical, theoretical and practical. Economic history and statistics comes under historical category, and under practical category we have public finance, economic politics and private economics. Okay. The general aspects of economic facts and phenomena and the interrelationships between them come under theoretical category. Now, according to the main studies of Menger is that in order that a thing should be in possession of qualities necessary for being a good, four conditions have to be satisfied. Menger devotes a lot of attention to goods, G-O-O-D-S. So, regarding goods we have often studied in our first paper, no? What are goods? So, in other words, goods are those things which can be put in the interrelationship of human wants and their satisfaction through the consumption of the utilities. Accordingly, in order that a thing must be in possession of qualities necessary for being a good, four conditions have to be satisfied according to Menger. Number one, there must be a human need to be satisfied. Number two, the thing under consideration should be able to satisfy this need or want. Number three, the want satisfying capacity of the thing under consideration must be known to the person or persons concerned. Number four, the person or persons concerned must have the technical ability and control to direct the thing to his or their want satisfying use. These are the four necessary qualities. Okay. Now, it is the satisfaction of these four conditions that makes an item a complete good, otherwise a good quality suffers. It may be mentioned that needs are not confined to individuals only. There are needs of the associations like states, cities, etc. And there are also collective needs like railroads, bus service, etc. which have to be satisfied by common institutions or instrumentalities. The wants of the associations are not felt directly by the individuals, but the collective needs are felt, though they have to be satisfied on a basis different from the one on which pure individual wants are satisfied. So, Menger gave importance to what? Menger gave importance to goods. Okay. Then he also gave importance to value. The economic character of goods results from their scarcity, and in conjunction with utility they acquire value. So it is something imputed by the consumers. It was the degree of significance which the consumers accorded to a good. Now, Menger did not use the term marginal utility in the explanation of value, but he gave importance that value of an article is the importance that a consumer attaches to the least important want. value is not dependent on the total utility but on the lowest utility one gets from the good, and it is basically an individual phenomena and independent of society and the laws of the state. So, in conclusion, we say that Menger made his mark in the academic world because his treatment was not non-mathematical and it did not contain diagrams and difficult mathematical derivations, so people could understand Menger's theory. And he covered most of the things such as value, exchange, price, value of use, value for exchange, theory of commodities, theory of money. And he wrote many books and he covered the theory of production and commerce. Menger had some disciples, that means followers, who helped him to spread this theory of marginalism. And the Australian school held its own for long in the academic world. So this is all about Menger and about the Austrian school. Okay.